Hey, good morning to everybody. It's Daryl here, aka Artist in Recovery, and I'm doing another video from my bike ride. Let me start by saying I just did a video. It was called Vacations in the 70s, and it did good. It got some views. I felt kind of bad after I did the video because it did get a lot of views. I'm hoping I didn't disappoint anybody, because the whole point of the video was my vacations, that age in my life probably wasn't like a lot of other Americans. You know, not everybody had a picture perfect life growing up, you know, with vacations and, you know, in the station wagon going across the country. Maybe that was more in the 50s and 60s. But anyway, I hope I didn't disappoint anybody, because it wasn't your usual video with my talking about the Wet and Wild and being 13 years old. I hope I didn't freak anybody out, but it's honest. You can't hit me up for that. Okay, this video, since I thought about that, it still reminds me so much nostalgia on these beautiful summer days in August of when, growing up when I was younger. And I'd like to say this is about growing up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, but it's really about the 70s. In 1978, I was 12 years old. I'm trying to get the sun out of the video here. In 1978, I was 12 years old, so we're going to kind of focus on that. And I think I'll title this video Summer in the 70s, Building Forts, Dams, and Riding 10-Speeds. Because that kind of sums up my summers back in the 70s. And that sounds like it'll be a video mostly for guys, Gen X guys. But it's not going to be. I thought about this too. I had a younger sister, and a lot of you probably had siblings and cousins, females. And they always tagged along. So I'm sure there's a lot of women that could watch this that can relate to it about forts, dams, and riding 10-speed. So it's not just for guys. Okay, now the next thing I want to say is I'm not one of those guys that says, back in my day, my generation, we grew up tough. We were outside. You guys don't know what it's like. Your guys are a bunch of wuss. I'm not that kind of guy. You hear that all the time. This has been going on ever since there were generations of guys. 100 years ago, in 1925, some dude in his 50s was telling a younger guy, "Oh, you guys got it easy. Back in my day, we had flintlocks and horses, and, you guys don't know what it's like." This has been going on ever since there were men of different ages. Let's just put it that way. I want to look at it this way. I think young people now, say 13, 14, 15, whatever, and video games and the internet and all that, I'm sure there's aspects of it that benefit you that we missed out on. Just like when we grew up, there's a lot of things we benefited on that you don't get to experience. I think, in other words, every generation has its pros and cons. I don't want to be one of those guys that, puts down the next generation. We were better than you guys, because that's not really true. It's not. Like I said, things come and go, things change, and, there's a lot of things that kids today that could make me look like a fool. Playing video games, coding, dancing, a lot of things. Anyway, okay. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this man at the beginning of this video, because if you're around that age, Gen X, when you were a kid in the 70s, teen, whatever, anywhere from 6 to 16 or 20, whatever, you knew this name. This guy was a combination. This guy was a real American. I ain't no MAGA. I ain't no Trump supporter. But this guy was a real American. This guy was a combination of John Wayne, James Dean, Elvis Presley, and Dale Earnhardt. All right? Who am I talking about? Evel freaking Knievel, man. He was the man back in the 70s. And all the kids, all the boys, this was our thing, man. This was our rite of passage. Building jumps. All the kids back then had concrete blocks and 2x4s or plywood to build ramps, to build jumps. All right, this was the big thing. He was the hero of the day, man. hard drinking. I'm not condoning that, being a recovering addict and alcoholic myself, but he was a hard drinking, hard partying, womanizing. That's, I'm not, like I said, I'm not condoning but he was Mr. 70's. Okay, my first bike, it was the, traditional small 20-incher. They had the high handlebars, that go up. I forgot what they're called. It had the banana seat, blue sparkle banana seat. We're talking 70's here. And my father brought it home. Like I said, he was the park ranger. He was the head of the state park. So there was always stuff left in the park. So I got this junk leftover bike, and I basically rebuilt it. My uncle, who was a little older than me, like I said, I got Native American blood in me too, and my uncle looked like Lou Diamond Phillips. He was my hero back then, and he had the long hair, and he looked like an Indian. And he helped me build this bike, and he cut forks off another bicycle, the forks, for the front tire, and brought it over to my house, and we pounded them on my forks to make a chopper. You know what I'm talking about? Extended forks. Okay, and I found myself a little wheel, a smaller wheel to go in the front. And then I found a slick to go in the back. So I had like a racing slick in the back. And, it was like the rich kids had the, the Schwinn racers with the shifter and all that. They bought them, but kids like me, we built them. It had the sissy bar. They went all the way up to my head, up to here. I still have a scar, okay, right here. 4 stitches right there. I don't know if you guys can see it. 4 stitches. I did a wheelie. I was going over a jump, and I did a wheelie as I was going over the jump. And the bolt that goes through the banana seat to the sissy bar, where the back of the banana seat bolts to the sissy bar, because I built it myself, there was a bolt sticking out, like a rough cut off bolt, and that bolt, as I pulled the front end up, that bolt ripped right through my leg. I mean, I heard my skin rip, and I looked down, and it's just the fat is just hanging out of my leg. I thought it was falling. I thought my guts were falling out. I ran into the house screaming. Got 4 stitches. That's another thing that separates us 70's kids from the kids of today. What's the newest? What's the newest generation? Gen Alpha generation. That's the newest one, I think. There's Gen Z. That's what separates us. We got hurt, and we got hurt a lot, and we got hurt often. Nowadays, me and my mom kid about this. Nowadays, my mother would be locked up and in prison because how often she brought me to the emergency room. I mean, I was in the emergency room easily, no exaggeration, at least 3 or 4 times every summer. I broke a bone and got stitches every single summer. I got stitches at least 15 times. I've broken about 8 bones. My leg, my arm, my rib, my toe, my finger, my nose. Anyway, so Evel Knievel. Okay, let's get into the gist of this now. Like I said, building forts. This was our thing, man. This is what we did. There was no video games. There was only 3 channels on the TV. ABC, there was 1 ABC channel, 1 NBC channel, 1 CBS channel, and we had something called, I believe it was called UHF or VHF, and that was kind of like a weird, if there might be this weird local station. Around here it was channel 20. So you might get 4 stations. And in our living room, we had this thing that we turn. We'd have to turn the TV, beep, beep, manually, click, 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 click. It sat on the floor. It was a floor model TV. And it was a big, like a 18-inch, it was all just wood, this big wooden monstrosity. Maybe it was like 21-inch screen. I don't know what it was. And we had this, my father built, because we lived in the state park, we were kind of in a valley, and my father built this huge antenna on the side of the house with a telephone pole, and then an antenna on top of that. So we would turn this thing in the house, and there was a motor on top of the roof that would turn the antenna. We'd hear the antenna turning up on top of the roof. It sounded like a helicopter was landing on the roof every time we turned the channel. This is how we grew up, man. I had no AC, No AC growing up. I didn't have AC in my house, air conditioning. I didn't have air conditioning in my house until I was probably 14 or 15 years old, till I moved to the city or to the urban area. I had a fan. I used to lay on the floor in the living room in this log cabin we lived in, and I'd listen to 8-tracks, my father's 8-tracks, Santana, on hot summer days, with my shirt off, just in my shorts, on the cool wooden floor, and the fan on me. Where you're talking to the fan, where it goes la 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 la, like hello, lo, 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 when you're talking to the fan. Those were my summer days. All right, so I'd ride my bike, my 10-speed. This was when I got a little older. I had a green Murray 10-speed. That's all there was. There was 3 speeds, 5 speeds, and 10 speeds. I was the first guy in my school to get a 12-speed. All the other kids went to Washington, D.C. on a school trip. And my mom, because my dad passed away and everything, we couldn't afford it. So she said, you could have one of two things. You could have the D.C. trip with all your school friends, or you could have a 12-speed. You could have your bike. This was like I think it was like a birthday present. And I chose the 12-speed. So the 12-speed was a big deal back then. There were no 10 speeds were it. So I had this green Murray 10-speed, and I'd ride it to my buddy's house. So this was when I was about 13 years old. And we'd build forts, tree forts. They were really tree forts. They'd be about 12 feet up. And we'd find 4 trees in a square, and we'd, nail the boards around, like 2x8s, all around to the 4 trees, and then we'd build a floor in, and a roof, and we'd build the roof in, and then we'd fill the walls in. And come Friday or Saturday night in the summers, we'd sleep in it. We'd get our sleeping bags, and it'd just be out in the backyard, like a couple 100 feet up in the woods. And we'd bring the radio. Okay, and this sounds corny, all right? I wasn't always a crack and heroin addict. I'm a recovering heroin and crack addict. I've been clean since October 23rd, 2006, 19 years. And I wasn't an addict back then. I was actually a Boy Scout, okay, growing up. And we'd read Hardy Boy books when we slept out, right? Me and my buddy, we'd bring our Hardy Boy books and the radio. And we'd be in our sleeping bags, and we'd tune it into CBS Mystery Theater. Now, you could get an app for old radio shows, and you could hear this. It's CBS Mystery Theater from the 70's, and it's kind of like Twilight Zone-ish. Or Perry Mason, or what's the other guy? Alfred Hitchcock. It's a little Alfred Hitchcocky. It's Alfred Hitchcocky. And, at the beginning, it's, welcome to Mystery Theater. And you'd hear the door go, I still love hearing that. There's days when I still have my Hardy Boy books, and I'll break out the Hardy Boy book, and I'll get the app on my phone for Mystery Science or Mystery Theater, CBS Mystery Theater, and I'll put it on and start reading a Hardy Boy book. Even now, it brings back such great memories. Okay, the next thing, building dams. Man, we build dams all over the place, and I caused a major catastrophe in my neighborhood by doing this. This is part of the thing. Kids nowadays, I don't think you guys build dams or forts. I mean, I actually became an architectural draftsman. So a lot of this, it kind of played into me wanting to learn more about design, and I actually did civil drafting too, which I didn't design any dams, but I did do like landscape and planting plans and stuff like that. So we would build these huge dams, and it took a lot of figuring out to get them to hold water. So we'd put in plastic, so the water wouldn't leak around or underneath, and then we'd put in a pipe. I remember actually even using cement a couple of times. Every time we'd try to build a better and better dam. Well, we did build a better dam, all right? We got this river in the back of my house at Black Rock, the park, to fill up. And it had enough water in it so we could swim. The water was up to our necks. It was just a little river, like 2 feet wide. And we backed it up, and then we filled it in with a spillway, all right? We built this big wall, earth wall. And we found, it was like a 10-inch pipe, and we laid it through the ground, and then we put boards in like a spillway where the water would spill over and out and down the pipe. Okay, and then it was about September, maybe 1979, and a hurricane came through. and our little dam setup couldn't handle the water. All right. So I'm in the house watching TV or whatever, Battlestar Galactica or whatever I was watching at the time. And my mother's like, oh my God, Daryl, the backyard is washing out. The dam backed up and it took out our entire driveway and backyard. We're talking like an acre of land, like 12 feet deep ravines where this river just backed up and took a whole new direction and just ate up all the property and just carried all the dirt and trees down to the next neighborhood. Yeah, so luckily it was state land. This was a state house we were still living in. So the tax the fucking taxpayer ended up paying for that. I know that's not funny. Anyway, this is growing up back in the 70s, man. You know, we had no video games, we had no music videos, we had no nothing, man. We had our 10 speeds. We had hammers and nails and some old plywood and some old pipes, and we had a hell of a time. And we had Evel freaking Knievel. All right, please let me know in the comments if you're still watching. Let me know if any of this rings a bell with you. Have a great Tuesday.